how do we want to do this? Just say,
Not like that.
yeah, that doesn't sound like a good start to me. Or maybe it is, and this is just going to be a really shitty opening. Uh,
That would be avant-garde or fake and gay, like whatever.
yeah, I think that's what avant-garde means. We're back. We're yeah, we're back, and
Still
this
doing the
is
Red Scare thing.
sure. Let's ape their shit. Why not? Um,
We're talking about
so
a couple movies today,
yeah,
as as we often do.
talking about two movies, and I'm sure some other crap will be thrown in as well.
Yeah. But before we get into the movies, I saw this new movie in theaters a couple weeks ago that I wanted to talk about
Let's hear
because
it.
I thought it was really cool. It's called The Pope's Exorcist. I think I talked about it in the server before,
Russell
but
Crowe's in that, isn't he?
yeah, hell yeah, it's awesome.
Nice.
um, it's kind of like The Exorcist meets like The Da Vinci Code and like a little bit of Tomb Raider thrown in. It's fucking cool, and it's not like a weird, purely like faith based film like you would see.
Right.
Um, but it's not that. It it just it's not being like ironic with it or anything. It's just kind of like presenting the information. It's pretty cool. It's like The Exorcist in that way.
Right. It's just matter of fact about the rules of the universe that the film is set in. It's not.
Yes, yeah,
Okay, that sounds pretty interesting.
and
It's like Constantine
yeah,
with
kind
Keanu.
of. I haven't seen that, but it's kind of similar.
Yeah.
Although I did recently figure out that the director of that, was also the director of 3 of the Hunger Games movies.
I
So
actually haven't seen those. I
they're pretty good.
recently the reason I had Constantine on the mind is I saw a clip like a couple days ago of Keanu Reeves being asked if he could play a character again that he hasn't been asked to play, like to reprise the role of. Who would he want to play? And he wanted to
Yeah,
play John Constantine again. So who
yeah.
knows?
I remember seeing some kind of like rumor around that they were making a second movie of that, and
Mm,
that made me be like, oh, maybe I'll give that a shot because I think I'd always kind of avoided it because I used to be like a DC Marvel guy, which I'm not anymore.
right.
So I was like kind of annoyed that he didn't look like the quote unquote comics, which I had never read. So I don't know why I had that thought in my head.
Right.
Which I think is a common problem among Marvel adults, but that's a topic for another time. The Pope's Exorcist. It's based on I guess the diary or the writings of Father Gabriel Amorth, who was the head exorcist of the Vatican in like from like the 60s into the 80s or something. And so like he has this like badass line in the trailer where he's like, if you have a problem with me, take it up with my boss, the Pope.
That's a pretty great line. Is
It's
that
pretty great.
is that the same? Is that the same Exorcist that was in that William Friedkin documentary where he went to Italy
Is there a
and
documentary he did?
yeah. Hold on.
I don't know. Maybe. I didn't know about this. Well, while you're looking that up,
Oh, I think it is.
Okay,
Yeah, it's called
Gabriel Amorth.
Yes.
Oh my god, I have to watch this now.
It's a documentary that William Friedkin did called The Devil and Father Amorth. So
Holy
uh,
shit! All right, I'm gonna have to add that to the old watch list.
yeah,
That's awesome.
maybe once I check out the movie, we could do that and the Friedkin documentary as like
Yeah,
a
maybe.
episode or something.
Well, if we want to save it for that, I won't spend too much time on this. But there was an aspect of it, and since I usually don't, I'm not a big believer in spoilers as a concept, but for new movies and new stuff, I won't, since it's still in theaters, I think.
Yeah.
I definitely recommend checking it out, but I do think it's been a success because I think there's a sequel in the works.
Oh.
Um, And so its basic plot thing is the Exorcist opens up a series of information Da Vinci Code style that may lead to a problem within the church. Basically, where it comes down to, and this guy has to stop it. And it's fucking cool, man. Like it makes like Catholicism look badass. So maybe it's kind of immoral in that way, but
it makes Catholicism look badass.
Yeah, and it's by this director. He's an Australian guy, Julius Avery. He's made a few movies that have done fairly well. His first movie I just recently watched called Son of a Gun with Ewan McGregor and Brenton Thwaites, I believe is how you pronounce it. He's an Australian guy.
Okay.
Plays Robin on the Titan show, by the way.
Mm.
And so that's pretty good. It's about it's like a prison break movie. And he did this really successful movie called Overlord in 2018. J.J. Abrams produced it. It's kind of a John Carpenter-esque like action horror thing.
Okay.
Which is a pretty cool movie. So he makes these like really kind of high-end genre stuff that's just like fucking dope as shit. But why the Pope's Exorcist like kind of stood out to me was it was playing with this thematic concept of like evil being humorless.
Oh,
it's not really something that I'd seen in too many movies. I can't really think of any that have like explicitly done that kind of thematic thing of like evil people and demons like don't have a sense of humor. It's a very simple thing. It reminded me a lot of when on this episode of the Perfume Nationalists when Jack Mason was talking about the Mist of Babylon. Shout out to them.
Yeah.
They were talking about the Mists of Avalon by Marion Zimmer Bradley, and they were, let's say, you can listen to the episode. I think you'd have to subscribe to his Patreon, but it's really good, so I'd recommend it. They were, let's say, evil people, and they had basically no sense of humor, and apparently the novel is very just kind of drab and dreary and not very fun. So I don't know. It was a cool thematic thing, this whole concept of like when you're a really bad person, you can't see things having like comedic value or whatever. It's something I've noticed among, hate to say it, some objectivists that we've seen.
Believe me, you're preaching to the choir.
Not that I'm saying they're evil per se, but just the idea of having a sense of humor is really important, and it's not about not taking life seriously. It's about seeing like the joy in life, and I thought that was cool. Anyway, really cool movie, The Pope's Exorcist. See it in theaters. This is not an ad or anything, but if Sony Pictures wants to reach out, I will take your money.
Yeah,
no problem.
Definitely reach out to us, and we will advertise your shit. We want money. That'd be awesome.
I will sell out hard.
You know what? People criticize people for selling out, but I think those people have never been given the opportunity to sell out. So
yeah, the sellout haters are fake.
Yeah.
And another word that I will not say if I can sell out.
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, you have to be a bit sanitized in order to sell out. So
unfortunately,
yeah.
But getting to the movies of today, we watched two, I guess you would call them romances, which not movies that I typically watch and Joe typically watches. I generally like them both, but one of them was Carnal Knowledge from 1971, directed by Mike Nichols, who was kind of one of those early new Hollywood guys that came to prominence in '67 with The Graduate. I think many people considered that alongside Bonnie and Clyde as like the start of the new Hollywood.
Mm.
And then there was 1983's Terms of Endearment by James L. Brooks. And the reason for the double here, which actually there turned out to be a lot of reasons for the double, was Jack Nicholson stars in both.
That's right.
And it turned out to be a lot of connections here, but I think we'll start with Carnal Knowledge.
Yeah.
What did you think about Carnal Knowledge?
Now, to preface this, when we watched Carnal Knowledge, I was tired, but
Yeah,
that did not stop me from paying attention to the movie. Uh, I
paying attention.
Yeah, visually, I thought it was a lot more a lot more visually interesting than Terms of Endearment. That's not to say that Terms of Endearment was a bad looking movie.
Mm,
It just had, I guess they both had some pretty interesting like editing choices with how they structured their scenes, and like having
yeah,
almost no scene transitions for most of the actual movie. They just kind of hard
right.
cut with time jumps, and you just kind of are like, oh, time has advanced now. Except
Yeah,
for in Carnal Knowledge, there's two very specific sequences where there's like a flash of white on the screen for a bit that then
yeah,
signifies a quite large time jump for both times they use it.
I
Um,
think so. Yeah.
and I don't know, the story, again, it wasn't really a kind of movie that I typically watch. The story wasn't too engaging
Mm,
for me, in my opinion. This doesn't mean I didn't like the movie. I had some fun with it. It was pre The Shining Jack Nicholson, so
yeah,
um, he wasn't crazy. Uh, but
he's not as mannered as he wound up being.
right, his performance was my favorite part of the movie. He's the character that he plays is a pretty interesting, like, kind of case study of the weird sort of habits and views of this particular guy,
Yeah,
his view of women and so on.
yeah.
Yeah. Art
Um.
Garfunkel plays the other main character too, which was weird.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes.
Yeah. It was like something I had to remember after the fact. I was like, oh yeah, that was fucking Art Garfunkel.
Which is, I think, another weird Mike Nichols connection is that The Graduate. I haven't seen The Graduate. I need to watch it, but it was groundbreaking at the time because its soundtrack is entirely needle drops, I believe, and it's all music from Simon and Garfunkel,
Mm,
if I remember
okay.
correctly.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's where they got famous, I think.
Ah.
Um, but yeah, Carnal Knowledge. I A lot of people I talk to say that this is their favorite Mike Nichols film. It's only the second one I've seen, so I can't really say. I like it more than The Birdcage, but The Birdcage is fun.
Mm, I have not
um,
seen that.
a movie from the '90s with Nathan Lane, I think, and someone else about a couple gay guys that run a theater company. I think pretty fun movie.
Yeah.
I watched it with my mom. I think. Um, yeah, like the editing of Carnal Knowledge, I quite liked. I liked the not transitioning to the scenes generally, just kind of ending one and starting another. Uh, it almost feels choppy at times, but it's not quite that. It feels more deliberate than that. Of It reminds me of something the filmmaker Roger Avery, I think, talked about on some podcast that I listened to. He talks about how he doesn't like what do they call them when like I think Hitchcock talks about this too, like drive up scenes. I can't remember what it's called. I guess they're just transition scenes or um man, what is the word I'm thinking of?
Like an establishing shot?
Establishing shot. Yeah, Hitchcock, and I think I've heard Roger Avery talk about this too. Is like, well, Hitchcock would say like never use an establishing shot to establish, because establishing something doesn't really do anything cinematically, as in terms of drama or anything. It's just kind of like, this is where they are now. But
Right.
it's like, why do I care? So he would, a lot of times, if you do an establishing shot, there's a reason for it. Like there's like a scene of a funeral and you cut to like a wide of the funeral to show where they are, to show the scale of the scenario, like whatever.
Yeah.
And in Roger Avery's movies that I've seen, like Lucky Day, scenes will just cut to the next part. Edgar Wright kind of does this too, but instead of like just hard cutting, he'll do like the match cut thing.
Yeah.
So he's a bit more showy about it, but it's kind of the same principle. Like the idea of like an establishing shot or a drive up shot is just not all that interesting. So you just cut it, which I like. I think that's cool.
Yeah,
And
that sounds about right.
it has that kind of 70s pessimism by the end, and that's pretty fun at times. Although it does feel kind of abrupt, the way the movie ends, because I thought it was going to end. I don't know if you felt this, but it was about like there's about 20 minutes to go when it hit something, and I thought it was ending there. Can't remember what it was. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Was it when Jack Nicholson's like girlfriend character attempts suicide? Or was it before that?
Yeah, it's the suicide scene. I thought she was dead for a sec there.
No,
I thought she had
no.
killed herself. I thought that's where it was going to end.
That would have been something. That would have been really abrupt.
Yeah.
It's like she's dead. Also, I said the word suicide, so fucking YouTube is gonna put like a this video contains self-harm topics or some or shit like that. They did that with they did that with our Harakiri episode, which fucking obviously that's going to be dealing with
yeah. I think it's also because we put KYS in the title.
KYS was in the title. But it's the funny thing is that Harakiri doesn't really have anything to do with self-harm, because the concept of Harakiri, as it is portrayed in the film, isn't even about like self-harm. It's he's forced to murder himself. He's murdered.
Yeah.
But anyway, off that tangent. Yeah, I didn't know what to expect after the scene where his girlfriend like attempts suicide. And then they decide to end it with like, I guess, Jack Nicholson's character and Art Garfunkel's character are now like they're like middle aged or whatever, and he's just like showing Jack Nicholson is just showing them a slideshow of all the girlfriends he's had, and he's just very demeaning about all of them. It was a really bizarre scene, and then the other guy's girlfriend just starts crying, and they just leave without saying anything.
And then I think it cuts to like that night or like the next day, maybe.
Yeah, and they're just walking and talking to each other on the street or whatever.
Yeah. There's some kind of fun choices, but it's kind of one of the thematic crossovers between the movie is about like time moving forward and relationships between two people, whereas in this one it's focused on two bros and their kind of waxing and waning relationship. And really the second movie is more about a relationship with a mom and a daughter and their waxing and waning relationship. I didn't plan this, folks. I just picked two movies with Jack Nicholson that were romances. So.
Yeah, that was really funny when we started watching the second one. It's like, oh, this also is doing this same time jump kind of thing where they're showing like an evolution of a relationship or relationships over like decades.
It was bizarre. It does make me think about. I've heard some writers talk about how um, novels can do this interesting thing with time, where you could describe 1 second in like 3 paragraphs, or you could describe 300 years in a sentence,
Yeah,
and it's
that's an interesting way of putting that.
yeah. And with film, it's kind of hard to do that. Like you can focus in on a moment, but you you just kind of have to go with the movie, and maybe you get some quote unquote backstory, maybe you don't. You just kind of have to accept what you're given and understand that that's the focus of what's happening. That was just a thought that came into my head, but
Yeah.
I I generally liked Carnal Knowledge. I think for me it kind of teetered off for me about the last quarter of it. But I liked the energy of the, what is her name, Carolyn Bergen something.
Candice
What's that girl's?
Bergen.
Candice Bergen. I liked when she first walks on. Um, I love the lighting in this movie. I thought I liked how the outside is lit and they just kind of walking in and out of shadow. It's very simple, but I just thought it was cool. It's nice to see lighting in movies.
Yeah, it's nice when a scene um actually looks like there was a deliberate effort to present something to you as opposed to
Yeah.
just we're in front of the camera now, let's go. Uh
And it's so obviously they're both romances, so there's not really any action, quote unquote.
right.
But I mean, in terms of drama, the action is just what the characters are doing.
Right. On a similar note of lighting, just to kind of jump to Terms of Endearment real quick, I really liked how the movie starts and the screen is completely black except for the bottom right corner,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
was the night light in a baby's room, and then
yeah,
you just hear dialogue from like off screen, and then she opens the door and it goes from pitch black to you can see her silhouette as she goes in to check on the baby and the light kind of cascading in. I thought not a super complex, not the most complex thing in the world, but it was a neat way to open that movie. I thought that was pretty good.
yeah. A lot of the stuff going on in both these movies are like things that are like not complex. They're just really well executed,
Yeah.
and that's nothing better to ask for. Like we were talking about when we watched Carnal Knowledge, the one of the early scenes, you have Art Garfunkel talking to Candice Bergen, and you have Jack Nicholson in the background in the doorway.
Yeah.
Everyone's in focus, but it's not like a split diopter thing. It just seems like they have the camera that has like the focal length or whatever it is. I'm not a DP to keep everything in frame, and
Yeah.
it was really cool.
Yeah, for
Very
sure.
very simple stuff like simple makeup on Candice Bergen, but she looks fantastic when she comes on screen. Um,
That too.
yeah. Um, what was another thing? Oh yeah, about what we were saying with Terms of Endearment. Um, I like how when it opens and the light comes on, it's got this very kind of um, what's the word? It like fuzzy look to it. You know what I'm talking about? um, it
I
looks
think
like
so.
a like an old like perfume commercial or something, and it's just very lush, and it's kind of jarring, especially with like the more, I guess you would say, naturalistic kind of framing and Carnal Knowledge, which I think is kind of the 70s 80s difference.
Yeah, that
Terms of Endearment looks like a soap, basically. At least that first part,
yeah, yeah. It
which I don't know. I thought that was cool.
yeah, Carnal Knowledge definitely had that 70s uh dark tone that kind of
Yeah,
matched the more defeatist, maybe a tad nihilistic outlook that it had
right.
as a story. Um, and
But but it gives a Fountainhead reference, which is
It
pretty fun.
it did, yeah, and it came out of nowhere, and we were like, "Oh, holy shit, what the fuck?"
Whoa, run that back.
Yeah,
And I like how it compared to the Fountainhead reference in what's that? Dirty Dancing, where the Fountainhead is portrayed as like the sensitive guy's book that he's reading to placate his girl. Whereas in Dirty Dancing, it's portrayed as like the thing that like the douchebag that
it's
wants you to get an abortion.
the
gives
source
you.
the source of his douchebaggery,
Yeah,
his pocket Fountainhead.
which is another kind of ironic 80s 70s difference.
I guess so, yeah. I found the scene where he's showing like the slides, the pictures of all the girls he ever dated or whatever.
Yeah,
And it like goes way back to when he was like 6.
yeah.
And it's like this little girl that lived next door, he's like, "Oh, she was the first girl I liked, and then she moved away."
And it goes up to when he's like in high school. And it's like this girl, she had a nice pair of tits for 15 or
It's like,
whatever.
holy shit.
And
Insane.
it's another weird connector with Terms of Endearment because he's almost playing a similar character just at a different time in his life in Terms of
Yeah,
Endearment.
kinda.
When he shows up with like a 16-year-old driving him home.
Yeah,
It's pretty wild.
that was a great introduction to his character, and it really shows the difference between like pre The Shining Jack Nicholson and post The Shining Jack Nicholson, because in Terms of Endearment, his first scene, he's like hammered in the passenger seat of a car with these like two young women, and the first thing he does is fucking fall out of the car and smash his head on the ground. And he's like, they're trying to tell him like, you should go inside and like get that attended to, and he's like making goofy faces and
It's really weird. It's his like post Shining. He's like one of those actors like Al Pacino who, after a specific role, I think with Al Pacino it was Scarface.
yeah.
After a specific role, like they become basically a parody of themselves in every movie after.
Right. It's like how the guy that played Elvis in the Elvis movie that came out recently, apparently he started talking like Elvis after he made that movie.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's just some movies you don't walk away from.
Fair enough.
And if you want to see a post Shining Jack performance that's just like obnoxious and makes you want to fucking kill yourself, Witches of Eastwick, a George Miller movie from 1988. Most annoying fucking movie I've ever seen. I really hated it. It kind of turned me off of George Miller for a while before I started watching the Mad Max movies. I think I've only seen the first two. I need to go back and finish those. Jack Nicholson. He's really awesome actor. I kind of want to do, I think, a full episode of like the movies that kind of made him a star back in like the late 60s into the early 70s. I think this is one of them, but there's like a group of 5 that came out around the similar time.
Like Chinatown, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, other stuff like
no,
that.
No.
Those are a bit later.
Those are a bit later. There's like Easy Rider, 5 Easy Pieces. There's one he directed. They're pretty early in his career that like put him on the map. Okay. And then there's like the masterpieces he made, like Chinatown and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. But we might talk about those a later date. But yeah, I love Jack Nicholson. He's probably one of the greatest actors of that time period, and maybe
just pure coincidence, but he's been in the he's been a bit in the news recently with like I think like a couple weeks ago there was a thing where like some fucking paparazzi came up to his house and was like taking pictures of him on his balcony. And it's like, look at this old. Look at this old guy and how like horrible his life is now. And then it's like, fuck off, dude, you suck. and then just like a couple days ago, It was the first time he had been seen publicly at like a sporting event. I think it was like a basketball game or something. That he was like courtside or whatever, and that was kind of doing the rounds. So just kind of coincidental that we decided to do a Jack Nicholson themed double feature here.
Yeah. Um, I think, Carnal Knowledge, it's on Prime right now. I think it's still there if you want to check it out. It's, I guess, hashtag not an ad, which is going to be the last time I ever say that.
Mm.
Um, the movie is, it's just kind of about two guys that get into and out of relationships with women and what happens to them throughout their lives. It's very much a 70s movie in that it's like a kind of a naturalist story told through the lens of someone that knows how to make a good looking movie. It was I I liked it how it didn't really feel so much genre, but it was just a kind of basic romance, but with that kind of 70s grit to it.
For sure.
All right, Terms of Endearment. We talked a little bit about it, but this one's about um, similar thing, but it's about a woman and her mother going through their lives and different relationships they have. Um, like we were talking about, it opens up with it almost opens up with like a sinister kind of sequence with her mom.
Yeah, that was
Where
really
you,
weird. I was.
yeah,
It made
where
me
I was
think
like,
that the
oh,
mother
where is
was
this
very.
going?
It made me think the mother was very like for most of the movie she was really strange. Like
Yeah,
the opening scene, it's like her baby is sleeping and she seems really paranoid. She's just like, the
yeah,
baby's dead, the baby's dead, it's not breathing, and then she like goes
and
over and the baby was in fact just sleeping.
and you hear the dad in the background's like, she's fine, get out of there, she's sleeping. And then she like almost like tries to climb in the crib with the baby, and then that doesn't really work. And
Yeah.
she tries to check her breathing, and then the baby wakes up and starts crying, and then she's like, "That's better," and
Yeah.
walks out of the room. And then it does like a time jump. So you almost think it's going to be like I think, what is it called, Mildred Pierce? I think kind of a like a mother daughter incest weird thing,
I
but
didn't think that at all.
that's where my mind went. Maybe I'm just a psychopath, but
No, I didn't
and
think that.
it doesn't go there. I
No.
Maybe you could read into that, but just the way that first scene played out, I was like, man, this might get really weird. um, but it's I liked it. It's not a type of movie I would watch all the time, but I'm glad I did because I'm gonna be in this production of Oscar Wilde play, so that type of like romance and like comedy of manners type situation is something that's on my mind.
Hmm.
Um, and it looks great. Like it's, I was telling Joe when we were watching it that like, I know we say this a lot on the show now, but like movies that used to look good, like even just a basic romance drama about a mother and her daughter growing up and getting into relationships and out of them.
Yeah. It also the music was uh very big focal point of the movie. I think
Yeah,
it had
yeah,
some weird moments where it was like very upbeat sounding and almost
yeah,
like it was very much like a lot of soundtracks try to like blend in with the scene, if you know what I mean. This one was like in your face.
Well, yeah,
With
I think that's a modern development of like
yeah.
soundtracks wanting to be like ambient, and
Hmm.
there's value to that, I think. But having a soundtrack that is very much telling you what it is, and so that's another another way to do it, I suppose. It's really I really liked it. Who's that composer? What was his name? Michael Gore or something?
It was Michael Gore. Yeah, I don't know what else
All
he's
right.
done, but
Keep
apparently it
talking
was
and I'll look it up.
apparently it was a quite successful movie though. For the
Yeah, I
time,
think it was a big one. Yeah.
it definitely performed well. Not that that really matters in the grand scheme of things, beyond the economic side of making
Yeah.
a movie. Um,
Which is important.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's an expensive art form, so making your money back and more is definitely important. Um, this one was definitely, though it dealt with a lot more dark subject matter near the end. It actually felt a lot more hopeful, which probably is a indicative of the '70s '80s difference when you talk about the two
Yeah.
movies in comparison.
Yeah.
And it was interesting that this was a connection between the two that was completely was unintentional when they were picked. Was that like the first one that we watched, Carnal Knowledge, is like about two guys that are friends and their relationships throughout their lives, and this one is about uh, a woman and her mother, and they are like kind of the focal point of this movie, kind of going forward through their lives. Um, just an interesting parallel there, with Jack Nicholson, I guess, also being the another connecting thread.
Yeah.
It has Jeff Daniels in the movie as well. This is
The
pre
young Jeff Daniels.
yeah or pre Dumb and Dumber Jeff Daniels, as I referred to him when we were watching it.
Yeah.
He's a whole different guy after Dumb and Dumber. Believe me.
He goes from being a dopey husband to selling libtard talking points on an Aaron Sorkin show.
Libtard talking points. Yeah, he made the most annoying Democrat fucking video that gets shared everywhere on the internet.
And it's like, isn't this deep and profound? Yeah, I was 17 once too.
Yeah. Another point to be made just randomly about the actors that are in this. The main character, the daughter, is played by Deborah Winger, who, when we were watching it for a bit there, I thought it was the same woman that played Henry Hill's wife in Goodfellas. It wasn't, but she does look like her, kinda. So that's just a random thing that I thought when we were watching that.
What else has she done?
Deborah Winger?
She was in E.T.,
Ooh.
a movie I have not seen, shockingly.
Yeah. Shockingly, I also have not seen E.T.
She was in this erotic thriller called Black Widow by Bob Rafelson, who directed Five Easy Pieces, which I mentioned earlier. So, yeah.
Danny DeVito is also in this movie in a very a very minor role. He's just kind of a guy that's there. It's very weird.
Yeah, he's like this, like, part of this harem of simps that the mom has.
You did not just say that.
And like they just kind of come over.
In this household, we use the term beta orbiters.
that just sounds like a weird, like, testing mechanism for like a tech giant.
Yeah, the
in San Francisco, orbiters. The beta orbiter. Yeah, she has this she has this doctor that, like, tries to tell her to come to terms with her age, and then she basically tells him to fuck off because your wife just died.
Yeah, that was a weird ass line where it's just like, it's like your wife just died. You're not thinking straight or whatever. It's like, what the hell? And what the doctor was one of her, like, harem of simps, right? It was funny because he's trying to tell her to come to terms with her age, and Danny DeVito is like, he's just like, how dare you? trying to gain favor in the court of the I can't remember her name was like Aurora, I think.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, Jack Nicholson plays like her neighbor, who is just incidentally also a retired astronaut. Like that was
Yeah,
it's a part of his character, and it's like a part of I think there's a line in the movie where he gets very upset at her because he's displaying all this stuff about him being an astronaut in his house,
yeah,
and it's just like, he's like, hey, it's as much a part of me as anything else. Uh,
yeah. You got to use what you
what
got.
you got to use what you got. Why can't I be? There's like 100 and something astronauts in the entire planet, and I'm one of them, or something. Uh, yeah, the romance with them is funny because they were neighbors for like 20 years or some shit, and
Yeah,
the entire time he's like this like middle-aged slash older guy going after like young women,
yeah.
and um, I think by the end of it he does like settle down with her, right?
Basically, yeah. And I love. First off, one thing when you watch like movies from before cell phones is that there's a lot of like drama and suspense that comes from just like a phone call.
Right.
And the like dramatic irony of like them not seeing each other's reactions and having to come to terms with it, and you're kind of following along both sides of as the audience. And there's a phone call where the mom is like bragging about the astronaut, is what they refer to him as.
Yeah.
And she says, have sex with him. It's only my first date. And the Deborah Winger character is like, first date? You've been neighbors for 15 years. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
You've been mildly flirting with each other for 15 years. This is not a first date. What are you talking about?
Right. The mother and the daughter have like a really weird relationship where the mother seems that she's completely unhappy with any decision that her daughter makes, like ever. Down to the fact that like when she's telling her that she's pregnant, she's just like she kind of just has like a "Are you serious?" kind of reaction because I guess she just hates the man she chose to be with.
Well, yeah, and I think it, and part of the reason I think I made the like weird incest connection, which may be a bit too strong in what I'm describing, but there's a reason for it, and that's like I think a lot of what the mom is dealing with is just this kind of overall sexual frustration that she's just trying to take out on her daughter because she's not sexually frustrated.
Maybe
in the mother's eyes, but
maybe
turns out she actually is.
right,
And she's just not open about it. And it's this kind of like general family drama of like the mom thinks she like at the beginning of the movie she's like rejecting all these men for whatever reason, and her daughter kind of calls her out on it. It's like, why do you treat them like this or whatever? And
right.
she just doesn't really have anything to say, and I guess she just can't really connect to a man. I think did their dad died, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because the scene after when it transitions from like the scene where she's a baby in like the opening scene to when she's a child, it's like I'm pretty sure that is at some sort of was it at like a funeral for the dad? Because there's like the guy like walks up to the daughter and he says something about like uh something about her dad dying. So it was like it was definitely like a recent occurrence in the scene that they show.
Yeah, I think I'm mixing it up with the spoilers, LOL.
Oh yeah.
For a movie in 1983, the mom ends up dying. Deborah Winger ends up dying.
The
Near the
daughter.
end.
That's the daughter.
The daughter, yeah.
Yeah. Although by the time she
I
dies,
said the mom because
she
she
is a
becomes
mother.
a mom,
Yeah.
and you see her kids kind of grow up a bit. And I was thinking of the funeral scenes with like the son in the background.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think I'm mixing up that with something earlier in the movie. I'm not sure.
Right.
But yeah, it ends up with this kind of dour ending of the mom getting cancer, like, and then the dad, and then essentially just kind of giving up the kids because he can't really take care of them.
Yeah, they give up their kids to the grandmother, who is Aurora.
Yeah,
I suppose we should probably be using names because we're using the mother to refer to both Deborah Winger's character and her mother in the story.
yeah.
So yeah, Deborah Winger's character was named Emma, and her mother was Aurora. But yeah, Deborah Winger, Emma, her character ends up just incidentally discovering that she has cancer. Her doctor finds like tumors on like her armpit or something.
Yeah.
And it's just like it was out of nowhere. As terminal illnesses in real life tend to be.
Yeah.
And I kind of called it as soon as he was like, oh, you have a lump in your armpit. And I was like, is this going to be like a cancer ending? And it was.
Yeah.
Not that that's a particularly clairvoyant
plot hole.
That's not a very clairvoyant point on my end that I associated a bump with a tumor, but
yeah.
It was a very interesting ending because by the end of the story, in dying, she kind of like rekindles the relationship with her mother and entrusts the care of her children to her mother.
Yeah.
Even though like most of their lives they were butting heads, and she married this guy, Jeff Daniels' character, whose name is Flap Horton, by the way. His name is Flap Horton, which was just such a strange name to see in a movie. I've never encountered a character named Flap ever.
Probably never will again.
Yeah. Also, just another weird name. Jack Nicholson's character's name is Garrett Breedlove, which is an insane name. His name is Garrett Sex Enjoyer, essentially. Like a crazy last name. Just wild.
Garrett Sex Enjoyer.
Just put the Giga Chad on the screen with Jack Nicholson's face. Garrett Sex Enjoyer.
Dr. Breedlove.
Yeah. Or oh fuck, what's the full title of that movie? Shit, I was gonna make a pun.
Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying About the Bomb.
And How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love Your Mom is the name of this movie. That's gonna be the title of the video. You said.
Yeah, that's it.
We had no fucking idea what we were going to call this video because we've been going.
Dr. Breedlove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love Your Mom.
Holy shit, that's a great title. Oh my god.
I was thinking we were going to go with like The Two Jacks, or A Harem of Simps was another example. But I think that's the one.
Yeah,
I think that's the one.
That is the one. If we keep this in the video, which we should, the viewer has just encountered us creating the title in real time, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, excellent.
All right.
To kind of reiterate a point I made earlier, it does have like a very depressing ending in that the main character that we've been following through the movie and seeing her struggles, she ends up dying, but there is like a kind of peace to it, while the ending of Carnal Knowledge, which is a lot less depressing in the sense that all it really is just showing that a guy is really shitty at maintaining relationships. Yeah. But it's presented in it's presented in a more depressing manner, and there's kind of a hopefulness in terms of endearment, like, she had children, and there's kind of, there was a rekindling of the relationship with her mom and all this other stuff.
There's even though of like
the story involved like the death of the main character, it had a more hopeful outlook.
Yeah, and there's kind of almost reconciliation between the husband and the wife because there is an adultery subplot,
Yeah.
as is common in this kind of story.
Yeah.
The husband never finds out about the wife's adultery with my favorite character, John Lithgow.
Yeah, we've kind of left out that John Lithgow is in this movie. He like jump scares me in the fucking he there's like a John Lithgow jump scare in the cashier lane at the grocery store. He's like there and you're like John Lithgow. and then he's a character in the movie now and you're like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah, he just kind of walks up and appears. It's like this scene in How I Met Your Mother where Conan O'Brien shows up and he just wanted to be in the background. He didn't want to be a character.
Right.
And so there's just a quick shot where this guy turns around and you see, oh, that's Conan O'Brien. And it cuts, you never see him again.
That's awesome.
It's awesome.
That rules.
And but in this one, you do see John Lithgow again because he starts having an affair with Deborah Winger, the Emma character.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's another John Lithgow jump scare for me was when they drive up and they meet at like either the restaurant or somewhere. I think it's the first restaurant they go to in the movie that we see them at. Mm-hmm. And he's just like smiling at her really awkwardly.
Yeah, he makes a really funny face as he drives up.
Yeah, he's great. He was also in How I Met Your Mother. He plays Barney's dad.
Oh, I've not seen that show. I've heard you talk about it many times, though.
We'll probably do an episode on it. I'll probably make you watch it.
Fair enough.
He's also, I think, in a sitcom my dad likes called Third Rock from the Sun.
Yeah. That's about like aliens that come to Earth.
Yeah,
and they're like trying to be human. And what's his name? French Stewart is in it with his very very squinty eyes.
Yeah, John Lithgow is one of those like kind of like consummate professional type of actors who like shows up and plays nice guys all the time, except when he's in a Brian De Palma movie. And Brian De Palma always had this basically like joke that he would do is that if he hires John Lithgow, he's playing him against type. So in Blowout, he plays a killer. And I think in Raising Cain, he plays like a psycho. I haven't seen Raising Cain, but yeah. So, and he, as convincing as John Lithgow is this like shucksy doodles nice guy, he's a fucking terrifying bad guy. He can do both.
Mm. Yeah, I've not seen any movie where he plays like a bad guy.
Yeah, De Palma's Blow. We'll probably end up doing. Like,
you know what? I suppose I have seen it. I suppose I have seen a movie where he's the bad guy, where he played Lord Farquaad in Shrek.
That's John Lithgow?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is.
Fuck! I didn't know that. Wow.
Another mind-blowing revelation.
Insanity. Yeah, John Lithgow's great. I love seeing him in movies.
Yeah, it is John Lithgow. I'm not fucking crazy.
Wow.
Yeah. John Lithgow, good actor. I liked him in Harry and the Hendersons, if you've seen that movie. Where
I don't think I have.
It's a movie where his family encounters Bigfoot and like bring him to their home, and they like.
I feel like I've heard of this.
Bigfoot looks a lot like Ron Perlman in Harry and the Hendersons, but I'm pretty sure Harry and the Hendersons came out before Ron Perlman was even like known as an actor. So like, I think it's just pure coincidence that he looks eerily like. that he eerily looks like Ron Perlman.
Ron Perlman, Bigfoot. We love to see it.
Yeah.
Do we have anything else on Terms of Endearment, Carnal Knowledge?
I do have one more point about Terms of Endearment. One of Deborah Winger's her character has two sons. One of them is just a fucking dick. Like
yeah, like the 10-year-old, I think by the end.
He's like 10 years old. One. He's like 10 years old by the end of the movie, and it's like he and his younger brother are like well aware that their mom has cancer and is like dying. And the kid that played the younger brother, like he was a really good actor for a kid. Like his crying was pretty damn good for for what appeared to be like a 6-year-old acting. It was pretty damn good. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah.
But like
Shout out to that guy.
the older brother, like he's just kind of like
fucking little bitch.
he's like being an asshole, and the mother basically kind of she's dying, but she kind of has this point where she has to tell them, like, she's like, you know, I know that you are pretending to hate me right now, but you know, like, when I'm gone and you like think back to all the things that, you know, I let you get away with, and you know, all the good times and stuff, she's basically just she's giving him this speech to try and preempt him feeling guilty about having been a dick to her, because she's basically like saying, like, I know, it's like, I know that you care about me, is essentially what she tries to tell him.
Yeah.
And then like the scene after that, this woman is like walking the two sons away from the hospital, and he has this remark about how they were never in the scouts or whatever because their mom was too lazy or some shit. And then the woman just starts like slapping the shit out of this kid. It's like, yeah, you know what? He kind of deserved that. You're talking shit about, you know, someone that's dying right now, you know.
Yeah. This is another like perfume nationalist type point of love that podcast. I listen to it religiously. Where he talks about how a lot of movies today are made by people that don't have children, so they portray children as these like adorable little angels that never do anything like bad or immoral.
Right.
Whereas like when you just like had kids and you just had to deal with those fucking bastards, sometimes they can be fucking bastards.
Right. And you gotta
like,
you gotta get rid of that.
You like,
yeah.
And you have to like, you know, like slap it out of them. You know?
Yep.
This is a pro corporal punishment podcast now.
Hell yeah! Let's proudly put that on the
like that scene in The Tenant that I sent you of Polanski coming up and slapping a child. So great. Spoiled little brat.
But yeah, no. I would say definitely give both of these movies a watch if you're in the mood for either like a 70s Jack Nicholson, kind of like darker, more naturalistic kind of. I guess there's a bit of a comedy to it as well. It's like a either, you know, if you're in the mood for that, or just like an 80s romance drama.
Romance with a kind of dour but hopeful ending.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah. I would say
basically date night.
Yeah, both of them are really, really worth checking out, I would say.
Yeah, one thing I love about like the quote unquote darkness of like 70s movies is there's something I'm starting to get sick of in like modern movies, of like just they're dark but no one knows why.
Yeah.
And like I think I've heard this on other places as well, but I think there's a lot of similarities between what we're going through now and what was going on in the 70s. But in the 70s, people were like living lives and not like stuck in screens all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So they kind of had a feeling of what's happening in the culture and around them. And today it's like, it's just kind of dour and annoying, and people just kind of push it down. So the darkness comes out as this like, it feels forced. I don't know. It's something I've been thinking about. Not really a fully formed thought, but
yeah, I can kind of see the point you're making.
And I think the point's been made more efficiently elsewhere. But yeah,
just another random connection between these two movies. Roger Ebert gave both of them a 4-star out of 4 review.
Yeah, these feel like Roger Ebert likes, for sure. Roger Ebert was a big New Hollywood fan and did not like slasher movies, so he probably would like Terms of Endearment. Roger Ebert could be kind of a dick at times, but
can't we all?
Topic. Yeah. Well, on that note,
I don't think we have too much more to say.
An hour.
Yeah.
And yeah, join us in another couple weeks. We'll talk about something,
Yeah,
and
we'll figure
it'll
something out.
have a snazzy title that's kind of dumb.
Yeah, something stupid but hopefully funny.